An early morning Jet 2 flight from Manchester to Rome, where we'll be spending a couple of days ahead of an Aegean cruise on Celebrity Reflection. We're staying in the IQ Hotel in central Rome, very handily placed. We'll be joined by Sue and Andy and Gwen and Rob. The first morning we take a taxi to Castel Sant'Angelo, which we've never visited before. Originally built in 139 AD as the mausoleum of the Emperor Hadrian, it's subsequently been a fortress and a place of refuge for the popes. Now it's a museum. It's a long climb up to the top, but from about halfway up there are some good views. In 590 AD, Pope Gregory the Great said he saw a vision of the Archangel Michael here. Having made it to this top platform, the views over Rome are spectacular. Strolling back through Rome, we stop for lunch and then pay a visit to the Piazza Navona. The piazza retains the shape of the 1st century stadium that used to occupy this site. The obelisk is a 1st century Roman copy of an Egyptian original. And on to the Pantheon, completed at the beginning of the 2nd century AD and in continuous use ever since. The Pantheon is now a Catholic church and includes the tombs of the kings of modern Italy. The diameter of the dome is 142 feet, and it remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world. Next morning we're visiting Ostia Antica, the ancient port of Rome. About 20 miles from Rome, this massive archaeological site has many well-preserved and restored buildings. We're walking along the Decumanus Maximus, the main east-west road of the town. At the Baths of Neptune there's access to the upper story. From here we can view some well-preserved mosaics and also get an overview of a large part of the site. The theatre is at one side of the commercial square. It was completed in the late 2nd century AD and could hold about 4,000 people. The other 3 sides of the square comprised business premises, and mosaics in front of them would indicate what trade they were engaged in. Time for a refreshment break in the modern cafe, and just round the corner is the ancient Roman equivalent. This is a wine and food bar. From the upper story of the apartment block over the road, you can see the entrance to our bar. The large building is the Capitoleum, the temple to the 3 major Roman deities, Jupiter, Juno and Minerva. The front of the Capitoleum faces onto the Forum, the main public square, which was a large open space, the main square of the city, surrounded by major public buildings. A small group of shops, the niche would have held the household gods. This warehouse building with shops dates from the middle of the 2nd century. The public toilets. We're heading towards the exit now, past the commercial square again with the theatre in the background, and one last look at the site. We went back into Rome by train and metro, and after lunch, seeing that there were no queues on this scorching hot August afternoon, we went into the Colosseum. The Colosseum was inaugurated in 80 AD and could hold 55,000 people. Under the floor was a labyrinth of rooms and cells to contain gladiators, wild animals, and the machinery to raise them to the surface. A major restoration project is underway, funded by a €25 million donation from the Italian luxury shoemaking firm Tod's. Outside is the Arch of Constantine, dating from AD 315, relatively new therefore, and the end of the Roman Forum. Next day, it's on to Civitavecchia and all aboard, ready for the cruise. And there's complimentary sparkling wine to be enjoyed on our copious-sized balcony. The first leg includes a full day at sea and takes us to Santorini, which involves travelling through the Straits of Messina. Santorini is the caldera left by a massive volcanic explosion about 1500 BC. A very busy day for cruise ships today, and we're all tendering in to the same spot below the main town of Thera. We've opted to take a local boat trip to the town of Aegean at the far end of the island. We're passing the cable car that links Thera to the dock. Approaching the harbour for Aegean now, and from here a minibus takes us up to the town. The view back towards Thera from Aegean. Some smart hotels clinging to the cliff below the town. Aegean is quite a classy resort. When it's time to return, there's a minibus for us back to Thera and then the funicular down to the tender. Next we head north to Mykonos, and that's where Celebrity Reflection finds itself anchored the following morning. No big plans for today, just wander round the whitewashed buildings of the town. Mykonos is another quite smart island with some relatively smart shops. The windmills are a well-known trademark of Mykonos. We've found our way back down to the harbour front. Time to head back on board for the next leg of the journey. Next stop is Athens, where we have 2 full days docked in Piraeus. We treated the first day as a sea day, and on the second day we got the hop-on hop-off bus from the port into Athens. The route took us past some affluent looking bays. We also pass some of the venues used for the 2004 Olympic Games. We change buses in Athens just below the Acropolis. Given the very high temperature, we have no intention of walking up there. The route now takes us past the Parliament building, guarded by the troops in traditional costume. The Panathenaic Stadium, reconstructed for the 1896 Olympics, on the ruins of an ancient Greek stadium. These 19th century buildings are mainly part of Athens University. Another view of the Acropolis. The final leg of this bus ride takes us through a market district. An early evening sail away from Piraeus. One of the many island ferries coming into harbour as we leave, and a Thompson ship on its way out. Overnight we sail across the Aegean Sea to Kusadasi in Turkey. A beautiful morning as we sail in again, and again it's going to be very hot. Kusadasi is the port for Ephesus, and that's what Sue, Andy and I are going to do. The others plan to stay in Kusadasi and go shopping. Our taxi drops us at the eastern gate and we enter the site into the upper agora. The Odeon served a dual purpose as Senate chamber and small theatre, and would have had a roof originally. Our first glimpse of the great library of Celsus. The street we're walking down would have had roofed colonnades on each side. This is the fountain of Trajan, and this is the temple of Hadrian. From the upper story, a good view of the library, and now we're about halfway round the tour of the site. The wonderful library was built about 110 AD. This street is known as Marble Street, and from it you get a view of the lower Agora. At the end of Marble Street, the Great Theatre. This theatre could hold 25,000 people. Outside is the Harbour Road, which led to the old harbour. We pick up our taxi and head back to the new harbour at Kusadasi. Overnight, Reflection sails to the island of Rhodes. Our berth gives us a bird's eye view of the old town and the fortifications. Immediately alongside us are the excavations into the ancient harbour of Rhodes. It's an easy stroll into the old town, and we start early. We enter through the Marine Gate. Immediately inside are the tourist shops. We head for the main historical part of the town. The Street of the Knights is lined by the inns used by the Knights of St. John from various European countries who used to control this town and the island. At the top of the street is the Palace of the Grand Master, lavishly restored by Mussolini. Rhodes was handed over to Italy following the collapse of the Ottoman Empire at the end of the First World War, and only became part of Greece at the end of the Second World War. Continuing our walk clockwise round the old town, there are plenty of cafes, tourist shops, and so on. Eventually we find ourselves in Fountain Square near the Marine Gate. Here we bumped into our 4 travelling companions and sat down for some well-needed refreshment. Continuing our walk, more shops. The ruins of the Church of the Virgin of the Borough, a 14th century Catholic church that was later used as a mosque in the Ottoman period. Opposite the church, Virgin's Gate. Nearby, the tiny church of St. Panteleimon dates from 1840. We leave the old town via St. Catherine's Gate directly to the excavations of the old harbour. We've been invited to watch the sail away from the ship's helipad, from where you get a good view of the bridge. An overnight sail brings us to Chania in Crete, or rather to Souda Bay nearby, so so we take a taxi into the old town. It was a 10 or 15 minute walk from the place where the taxi dropped us off down to the harbour. The old harbour was built by the Venetians in the 14th century. The fort was built to protect the harbour, but it couldn't keep the Ottoman Turks out in 1645. The Venetians built the lighthouse in the late 16th century, but it was modified a lot during the Ottoman occupation. The former mosque is now a craft exhibition centre. From the inner harbour it's possible to get many boat trips, and this is what we decided to do. We took a short trip in a glass-bottomed boat. We anchor off Lazaretta Island, which used to be a leper colony. Our eccentric diver and guide Alan finds interesting ways to harvest fish into view. Heading back now, and we're treated to a round tour of the Venetian harbour before docking again. Lots of cafes and restaurants around the old harbour, and that's our next priority before strolling through the old town and heading back to get the taxi back to Reflection. It's a day at sea and then we arrive in Naples. Walking off the ship we pass the former celebrity Zenith, now operated by Croisière de France. Facing us as we leave the terminal is the massive Castel Ovo. The Romans built a fortress here, but this one in this form dates from the 15th century. We're trying to find the central funicular, but on the way we stumble across the Galleria Umberto. Built in the 1880s, this is potentially a very striking building, but it's under heavy restoration at the moment. Eventually we find the funicular and make it to the top. There was still a lot of uphill climbing to do when we got off the funicular, but we were rewarded with good views of Vesuvius and parts of Naples. Behind us is the massive Castel Sant'Elmo, dating mainly from the 16th century. Back down in the city centre, it seems as if practically everything is under restoration. This is the Opera House. The Piazza del Plebiscito has the Church of San Francisco di Paolo ahead of us. Behind us, hidden by scaffolding, is the Royal Palace. Strolling back towards the ship, another view of Vesuvius and Castel d'Ovo. The impressive maritime station was built in the 1930s. Back on board, we can take a look at where we were this morning. And before setting off back for Rome and the end of the cruise, a look around the Bay of Naples.